then. That's fine.
All right, the YouTube's ready to go live.
All right, Roberto, you ready?
I am ready.
All right. Welcome to the June 28th, 2021 City Council work session. I will take roll call by name. Councilor Clark.
Councilor Clark is present.
Councilor Castilla.
Councilor Costilla, present.
Councilor Hutchinson.
Councilor Hutchinson, present.
Councilor Inman.
Councilor Inman, present.
Councilor Medina.
Councilor Medina, present.
Councilor Braccio.
Councilor Braccio is present.
And Mayor Knutson's present. Gang's all here. Next up is the mayor's report. I do not have anything to report, so we will move on to committee reports. First up is the Administration and Finance Committee.
Okay, yes, we met and we discussed the municipal judge contract, and Judge Palmer would like to have a 5-year contract so he can work until he's 75. I think he said it was pretty typical to retire, judges retiring at 75 or something to that effect. And he is fine with the financials the way they are. I mean, we don't have to pay him anymore than what he's already being paid. And Judge Palmer stated that he enjoys being the Creswell judge, and he's happy to do ceremonial stuff for no extra charge. And he also does remediation and code enforcement for the city. I wasn't quite sure whether that's an extra charge or not. Michelle, feel free to chime in on that if you want.
That would be an extra charge, and he only does it on occasion. Okay. So, and then Judge Palmer also commented that COVID has caused some change in court. You know, due to COVID, the deputies aren't writing citations and so forth, and that the number of people in court is low. And then the committee recommends that the contract, Section 15 term, be amended and brought to the July City Council meeting for approval, which we'll be looking at shortly. And I think there was something about adding a sub-paragraph to transitioning to Judge Pro Tem, which we will cover later on. And then we moved on to discussing streamlining the evaluation process. And much of our discussion centered around the, well, I think first of all, we thought, well, there's not much we can do. Well, it turned out after talking, there were a few things I think we could tweak and maybe do. So anyway, we discussed how we could streamline it. And I think we seem to agree that there needs to be consistency in how we submit our evaluation forms, so that when the information is shared, we all have it. It's when a deadline is missed and the evaluation is, just brought to the night of it, which I am guilty of doing myself. I miss it. I couldn't do it online, and then I just brought it with me, which means other counselors didn't get to see what my comments. So I think that we agreed that there needs to be a hard deadline for all counselors to submit those forms. And I think, maybe like 1 week prior to the evaluation, which sounded like a good number for us to go with. And that possibly that there should only be 2 options. One is to submit it online or hand it in person down at the city. None of this, I'll just bring it with me on the day of. This would be for the city attorney and the city manager's evaluations, because we felt that the judge's process seemed to work really well. You'd fill out the form there at court and just make sure that it's handed in at the end. That's a pretty good system there, just so long as we remember to hand them in. And I think we've commented that we may, there may be a line added at the top of the form, just remember to hand it in. So then we decided that it seemed like there was it gets a little hectic during December, the holidays. So we were going to try to, we decided that the evaluation forms for the city attorney and city manager will go out at the September work session, and in-person evaluation of the judge and city attorney will take place at the October city council meeting. The in-person evaluation of city manager will take place in November before Thanksgiving. That means that we all have to have our court evaluations done by October. And then once all evaluations are turned in, copies of the written evaluations will be provided to the person being evaluated. That was something else that came up in the discussion that we would try to do maybe a little bit different, to try to give the evaluees, just a heads up so that they can be a little more prepared and maybe trigger a little more conversation in how they can do a better job. And the city attorney forms will be due 1 week after the September work session, and the city managers will be due at the October work session. Maybe sound a little confusing. It is for me, but I'm sure we'll get some instruction on that printed out for us. Okay, and then let's see what else. We also wanted to make sure that counselors know to leave the municipal judge evaluation with the court clerk, which I just mentioned, and also to make sure that counselors know that they can come to look at previous evaluations of their own. If you just contact Roberta and say, hey, it may be useful to you guys, the ones that have already done it, to maybe just, hey, what did I say last year or whatever, if that may be of use to you guys. So that can just be done by emailing Roberta, and I'm sure you guys can take a look at it or whatever. And that was about it. That was the end of the meeting.
Nice. Well, thank you guys so much for doing all of that. That was kind of my hope, in that we get fresh eyes on this and try to streamline this process. And if we need to make some adjustments and make it better, and it sounds like you guys have some good ideas. So very good. All right, we'll move on to Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. So Public Safety Committee meeting met June 8th of this year at 5:30, and our main discussion has been the National Night Out, which that is Tuesday, August 3rd, and it's going to be from 5 to 8 at Holt Park. Our next meeting is set for July 19th at 5:30, and we'll be discussing wrap up and final planning for the National Night Out.
Very good. Next up is Transportation and Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. That one's mine. So I am pleased to report that the committee has completed both of its assignments, unless you give us a new one, which is always a distinct possibility. But what we have are the two main charges: the planning for the Public Works Day, which is completed. We may meet one more time, although I don't think that we are set to right now. But the other charge is to find a funding mechanism for the improvements for 2nd Street. And we came out of a few different meetings, building on the good work that the committee did last year as well. That set a really good foundation actually for us to pick back up on this year. So we were able to only have a few meetings and come to the conclusion and the recommendation, and let me make sure I have it here, that basically the funding happens in a few different ways. And so with what we came up with, there are the state highway taxes that are always part of our incoming money, and then there are federal funds as well. But what the committee is recommending and that we put forward also would be a local improvement district for any project that we're doing. And then also a 3% local gas tax that would be put forth to voters on this coming November's ballot.
I'm sorry, that would be a 3-cent gas
3 cents,
tax.
yes. I'm sorry, we messed that up even in committee and kept calling it 3. But you're right, Manager Amberg, 3 cent per gallon. So that's the recommendation that we're bringing forward to council.
All right. Very good. Next up is Parks and Tree Advisory Board.
We met and we are working on Crestwall trails. We talked about updating our current trails with fresh footing, like around the high school, safety for kids to use when they go back to school between the elementary school and the high school. And also AARP has a trail development tool that we're going to be using to identify good walking areas. And we meet again July 13th at 10 a.m.
Very good. Sounds like some good stuff going on. All right, next up is Airport Commission.
And there was no report tonight, Mayor.
All right, next up is LCOG, and I do not have anything to report. And so that brings us to Lane Act.
All right, so I would actually defer to our city planner, Phillips, for the details. I was unable to attend the last meeting due to some travel, and so Planner Phillips was there representing the city of Crestwell. What I can tell you about from the agenda is that we spent some time talking about some connections and some communication that we've had with the Oregon Transportation Commission. That we spent some more time. It looks like quite a bit of time talking more about the Lane Act area strategy. So similar, kind of what I brought up last time in terms of just the definitions, strategic planning, all that sort of stuff, as well as provided some input on some STIP, so some priority projects to fund kind of around Lane County. And again, I would defer to Planner Phillips for more details.
All right, Maddie, you got some stuff to add to that?
No, I think Councilor Clark actually did a very good job of summarizing it based on probably some agenda and minutes, but just to say that the area strategies project is still ongoing, but it seems that there's a little bit of friction regionally as far as how to proceed with prioritization and how to go from theoretical ideas about priorities and concepts into the reality that is funding, creating an investment strategy for projects. So that will be, as you might imagine, that's a very challenging step. And I think there will be a lot of consideration between both the project management team and others on the act as to how that proceeds. The timeline may change as far as what was expected. Otherwise, there was a presentation about some initial prioritization of some STIP projects for the 2024 to 2027 STIP cycle, State Transportation Improvement Program. And that was interesting in terms of how it was received. There were the priority that the Oregon Transportation Commission has established for some of the enhanced highway funding, which is a very, very small amount of money. There were projects that were selected primarily along I-5 that were identified as freight route bottlenecks. Unfortunately, the presentation did not include very much background information or criteria as to how those projects were selected. And I think that there was a lot of feedback from the Area Commission as to how that selection process came about. And so there's going to be quite a bit more discussion about that topic as well.
All right, very good. Next up, we have presentations and revising offense standards and updating development and municipal code. And that's you, Maddie.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. I will summarize this in a brief and hopefully brilliant way. Fencing is a topic that affects every single one of us, very close to home, and good fences make good neighbors. So in light of that, especially this time of the year, there's a lot of interest in repairing, mending, installing fences, and one of the items as we build out our code enforcement program, and Jerry Luke, our code enforcement officer, actually does a lot of our fence reviews. As he and I were working together to bring him up to speed on how fences are regulated, it was brought to our attention that, in fact, we have the fence code in 2 different places. And what's worse, it's not so bad if they're in 2 different places, but they don't say the same thing. So unfortunately, it becomes very tenuous and challenging for members of the public in Creswell to sort out how big a fence can be and where it can go. That said, in order for us to adequately address fence needs, there were a couple of considerations. The first is that the fence code lives in both the municipal code and the development code. There are different tracks for how someone might appeal a request for a fence, as well as a violation and the repercussions of an illicit or illegally built fence. Among staff and folks that Code Enforcement Officer Luke works with, he felt, and we both feel, actually it bridges with some of the topics that we brought up this evening around the municipal judge's contract. In fact, we would much prefer a fence violation to end up in our municipal court than for it to go on to the Land Use Board of Appeals. So as you might imagine, maybe the best choice, or what staff is recommending, is a better place for the fence code to live is actually in our municipal code. We will provide some references to fence code requirements in our development code, just to reference over. But what you see before you in terms of your packet materials are 2 separate ordinances. The first is an ordinance to remove the fence code details from the development code and make reference to the municipal code. And the other is a set of new fence standards. Now, before I move on to the new fence standards, I'd wonder if anyone has any questions. Okay. Councilor Casilla.
Hi, Maddie. Just one question on the findings of fact. It says there was a public planning commission held a public hearing on June 17th, 2021, and the city council held a public hearing on August 9th, 2021. Is that when? I don't recall. What am I missing here?
In fact, Councilor, thanks for bringing that up. The date for your hearing, or the public hearing when you will hear these ordinances for your consideration and decision, will be on August 9th. This is just an anticipated materials production item. Okay,
so this is hasn't happened. Obviously, hasn't happened yet, even though it says has held. Okay, all right. Thank you.
You got it. So in terms of fence standards, there were a couple items that might be worth highlighting. We brought over all the standards from the development code, nearly identical to what they have been for at least since 2007. The ordinance that predates this is from the early 2000s, and it was prior to our development code's revision. We had a big revision in 2007. So we brought over all the definitions. Basically, everything is going to be self-contained in this document. So if someone wants to read up on fence codes in Creswell, this will all be prepared in a packet for new fences and fence repairs. And this will also live as section 15.15 in our municipal code. The big changes or things that are slightly different from our old code is that we had a couple of things like fencing for commercial and industrial uses. Right now, as it stands, we have fence code requirements for residential uses, but most of the fencing that has been installed with commercial and industrial uses has not necessarily been part of an independent permit. A lot of the fencing has been a component of site reviews that are typical for a commercial development, but we lacked a mechanism for application by a commercial or an industrial development that's already built, something that has existed already and an owner wants to install a fence. And there were a couple of concerns about commercial fencing, in particular the use of barbed wire. That is something we've not typically allowed in the past, and there have been community concerns expressed about the use of barbed wire, especially in places that it's highly visible. So you'll find in section 3 of the materials in your of that ordinance in your packet, around allowed materials, there is at this point an allowance of use of barbed wire so long as it is not visible from the roadway. There was some concern about the ability to secure perimeters, especially up against the railroad tracks and some other places that aren't very well observed. And given the rash of concerning removal of certain parts of vehicles that Sergeant Dunham mentioned to the council several weeks ago, we've just been a little concerned about taking away tools that landowners or property owners might have in terms of securing their property. That said, in all fairness, the folks who perpetrated those crimes unfortunately cut through the cyclone fence underneath the barbed wire. So it's not so much of a deterrent as we would have hoped. That said, going through to the table around fence heights, you'll notice that there is a commercial and industrial component to the fence heights for it that is a bit taller than what we've had around residential uses before. Anything over 6 feet has a building permit requirement. However, if an owner really feels that they need a taller fence for whatever reason, they're more than welcome to get a building permit. We wanted to make that an allowed option. And further, there are just some clarifications from section 4 onward is primarily identical to our existing municipal code around earthen berms being considered very similar to fences, retaining walls that are not used to support the foundation of a permitted structure, and again, several variance requirements that mirror what we do with land use decisions around appeals.
Maddie, what's an earthen berm? I don't know that term.
Mayor, it's when folks would like some privacy, especially noise reduction. Often homeowners will build or property owners will build up a mound of dirt and sometimes grow plants and trees and all that on top of it. And it actually helps as a sound barrier if you live up against a busy street or somewhere where there's a lot of activity on the other side. The one catch, though, I might add while you brought up earthen berms is that you may not put a fence on top of the berm that is the maximum height. In fact, the height of a fence is measured from the leeward side, so usually the side that faces the road, so that we don't end up with 12-foot tall fences.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, seeing none, both of these ordinances were reviewed.
Councilor
Castillo.
Yes, man. Just one little one. The max height for the front of the fence is that 3 feet or 4 feet? And I asked because the little picture shows 3 feet, and then over here on the page behind it, it says 4 feet.
Good question. The visuals are not, unfortunately, we didn't have time to get there are some new diagrams. So this will be clarified in the version that you see before, that comes before you in August. Minor clarification. The front area can be 4 feet, except at the corner, where a corner might intersect another roadway. It's called the clear vision area. And we have a number of considerations in the clear vision area, including folks that are in mobility devices and recumbent bicycles, among other things. And it's very difficult to see someone who's they only end up, you can only see about it's about 3 feet, 3.5 feet high off the ground surface. So there were a lot of concerns expressed at the Planning Commission meeting about that. And the conclusion of that body's decision and discussion was that 3 feet is the maximum height that one can build a fence in a clear vision area, unless they cut the corner. You could have, that's why you see around town sometimes these triangular or diagonal corner cuts on fencing. So at that point, you can make a 4-foot cut. And that'll all be explained in the diagram that is forthcoming. Did I get to most of it? Excellent.
I think so. I don't see any other hands.
All right, well, Mayor, that's all I have for tonight on the fence code, but we're happy to be moving this forward for your consideration in August with a revised diagram in there for ease.
All right. We can move on to the Cottage Grove Transit Plan, and that is also Maddie.
Oh, I'll just give you a quick intro. This is Kelly Clark. Kelly is a transportation planner with Lane Council of Governments, and she's just finished up a wonderful project in Cottage Grove regarding transit demand planning, and I'll turn it right over to her and offer I'll sprinkle in a couple little ideas as she moves through her presentation.
All right.
And I'm going to go ahead and share the presentation.
Oh, okay, cool.
And be Kelly's Vanna White.
Yay, we've already planned this out, so it'll be really, really syncopated. Thank you for the opportunity for us to come, Mayor and councilors. I'm also here with Rachel Dorfman and Sid Schoaf. As Maddie mentioned, we just completed some work in for the city of Cottage Grove called the Cottage Grove Area Transit Development Plan. And just for a little background, the city of Cottage Grove hired LCOG to manage this project and to develop the TDP. So we had the opportunity to wear our consultant hats throughout it, but now we get to continue our involvement as a regional partner. So we are kind of in a special position with this effort. Maddie, if you could advance the slide. We developed this plan through a lot of regional coordination. We had a project management team consisting of City of Cottage Grove folks, the Department of Transportation, and then Sid, Rachel, and I, and then Ruth Linnells with the South Lane Wheels. Those were kind of the primary project management team. But then the advisory committee, we tried to be really regionally inclusive. And so it included the City of Cottage Grove, the City of Crestwell, Lane County, Lane Transit District, North Douglas Betterment, South Lane Mental Health, and the South Lane School District, South Lane Wheels Board, and the Umpqua Public Transit District. And if you could advance the slide, Maddie. Just overall, the purpose of a transit development plan, or a TDP, is a master plan that supports and guides decisions about service improvements, investments, evaluates and impacts of community growth, strengthens coordination with the public and community partners, and strategizes future funding opportunities. So we tried to stay true to this purpose throughout the project. The goals at a high level were to define the role of public transportation in the community, identify the Cottage Grove area transportation needs, and guide public transportation growth. And it was funded through the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund, or STIF funding. If you could advance, Maddie. So this is the first transit development plan within this area. And as we started the process to develop it, it became pretty apparent that it was more than a Cottage Grove specific plan. We expanded our scope to reflect this this bigger travel shed that you see here, where people are moving for their shopping, medical, educational, social, recreational, other basic needs. So that area does include the city of Cresswell, and then south to Roseburg, east to Dorena, west to Lorain, and then connecting into this Eugene Springfield area. So we evaluated the gaps and needs for residents within this area, and then developed strategies to meet those needs. And many of the gaps, needs, and strategies are relevant to the city of Cresswell and provide opportunities to support and engage in the future of transit within this area for transit-dependent community members and for those who just want options on how they choose how to travel. If you could advance, please. So the timeline that we followed is shown here. We kicked off the project right as COVID hit in March of 2020. So this is all accomplished through COVID conditions. We evaluated existing and future conditions and community profiles April through July of 2020, developed vision goals, objectives, and performance measures August through January, and then analyzed the needs that we've heard about through the community members, and then worked on developing implementation strategies for those to address those needs. We drafted the TDP through April and May, and then the Cottage Grove City Council approved the plan at their June 14th council meeting. So the majority of funding sources that will be sought to implement the strategies or projects that are identified in this plan require that project to be identified in a locally adopted plan. And so now this TDP is a locally adopted document that will help pursue the funding for transit and the projects that we've established in here. And the next slide, please. The project framework, just a kind of a visual of how we got where we are today. We developed vision, values, goals, and objectives based on a lot of the community engagement that happened throughout this project, identified needs and then strategies. And then where we are today is we have an adopted transit development plan and the opportunity to evaluate performance as it's implemented. And then the next slide, just as a kind of an overview of our public participation. The Stakeholder Advisory Committee met 4 times. We maintained a project website, presented to local groups and communities to get their feedback, had a announcement about the plan and the water bill flyer. We conducted an interview on the Beeper radio show and had a community survey that received 169 responses, and then presented to the Cottage Grove City Council in May. And the next slide, please. So the vision statement for the plan is that the Cottage Grove area has a regional transit system offering equitable, safe, resilient, and reliable local and regional connections. And I want to highlight the regional aspect of this vision statement. Transit operations do not operate in a bubble, and regional connections will serve all of our communities by addressing transportation barriers for community members and just help us be better connected in general. And we developed 8 overall goals. These are further detailed in the plan, but just for a highlight, there's safety, convenience, reliability, accessibility, environmental sustainability, equity, financial stability, and then system resilience. And next slide, please. We assessed transit needs from basically 3 primary sources, all of the feedback that we got from the community and stakeholders. We had some pretty robust conversations around the TDP goals and objectives that we captured as needs or gaps. And then analysis of the area's existing and future conditions. So what is the population, transportation, and land uses? What do they look like in the future as far as we're able to see or forecast based on the information available to us? Next slide, please. So the next couple slides, I'll just provide an assessment of the transit needs. Again, these are further defined in the plan. But at a higher level, the needs that we heard are that ADA compliant vehicles are needed for our aging and growing population. We need increased frequency of transit service that could be more reliably used for commuting, shopping, personal needs, medical appointments, and education. We need enhanced collaboration with regional partners to provide regional coverage, and need to expand weekday and weekend service hours in the morning and evening. And next slide, please. We need to expand marketing and outreach efforts to raise public awareness about the services. Provide some of the physical, financial, and technological barriers to transit need to be lowered, particularly for transit-dependent populations. Public transportation needs to contribute more to enhance community and economic development, and that resiliency needs to be integrated into the system to absorb and respond to economic fluctuations, natural disasters, climate change, and hazardous incidents, and all the crazy things that we are faced with on almost a daily basis now, it seems like. The next slide, please. Just one more slide about the needs. This is maybe a little more Cottage Grove specific, but they received transportation growth management funding to create a pedestrian and bicycle master plan. And we want to make sure our plans in general are talking to each other. So how do we coordinate those plans and make sure that our strategies support across different plans? Kind of similar to the fencing topic, we want to make sure that we have cohesion. And we want to need to increase staff and vehicle fleet to meet the community's transit needs, and then establish local performance measures with targets to help monitor progress. And so next slide, please. You did that, okay. So we were able to develop some implementation strategies throughout this plan and address those needs of how for now and in the future. We categorize them into foundational strategies, service strategies, capital strategies, and management strategies, and then associated with them with timeframes. They don't have to stay within those timeframes, but just to give us an idea of what we're talking about here. So short term being less than 5 years, medium term 5 to 10 years, and then long term over 10 years. Next slide, please. And just by way of some example of the strategies that are listed in the plan, the foundational strategy examples are to form an implementation team that will help carry out strategies and perform periodic assessment of the TDP. And a lot of that team could be some of the advisory committee members that have helped us all along. Establish performance measures and targets to track local progress and prioritize investments. And then, and by foundational strategies, I mean strategies that will kind of be an umbrella for all of the other types of more specific strategies. A service strategy example, expand service hours to include evening and weekends in order to better serve local businesses, regional destinations, and community events. And then to coordinate connections with other carriers, Amtrak, Link Lane, Umpqua Public Transportation District, and other regional services. And next slide, please. Capital strategy example are to conduct a feasibility study for the development of a mobility hub at the Row River Trailhead Park. And the opportunity there is, having kind of a mobility hub in that area to serve transit and walking and biking and multimodal connections. And then to encourage ADA accessible sidewalk and bicycle connections to transit, and again, coordinating with the pedestrian and bicycle master plan, but in all of the plans that we're developing. And then management strategy example, enhance marketing, education, and promotion efforts through print, online, and mobile platforms. And then coordinate with human service agencies serving adults, seniors, people with disabilities, and veterans to provide transit services that meet the needs of the members of our community. And the next slide, just to wrap up here, we had a public review opportunity for the TDP draft from Monday, April 26th through May 10th. So that was open for 2 weeks. And then the Cottage Grove City Council adopted the plan on June 14th of 2021, so just recently. And by way of presentation, that is all we have, but we're happy to answer any questions. Sid and Rachel again are here, and were integral to the development of this plan. So hopefully we have our bases covered for whatever questions you may have.
Thank you, Kelly. Does anybody have any questions? Getting feedback, yeah. Questions?
Mayor, if I might.
Yeah.
I wanted to speak to the relationship that Crestwell had to the production and sort of development of the TDP, the Transit Development Plan. Crestwell has a connection to Cottage Grove through Lane Transit District, and we, for years, at least as long as I can recall working here, have talked about transit service and opportunities to enhance transit service for Crestwell residents. What's interesting about the work that Kelly and her team have done is that many of the findings, at least in the initial pass at looking at who our transit serves and where the destinations and origins and destinations is sort of the terminology used in this area, a lot of the behavior and patterns are very similar. We're not the same community by any stretch, but we have a lot of similar characteristics. And what's nice is when we work with Cottage Grove or when we look at Cottage Grove's needs and desires as a city of 10,000, it allows the city of Crestwell to maybe think about what pieces and parts of their strategy are working and most successful and are getting people to the places they need to go efficiently and in a way that may be an alternative to using a vehicle. We have a lot of commuters, maybe more so than the city of Cottage Grove. We also have a lot of folks that are transit dependent, who don't necessarily, I guess I'll editorialize, don't always get great service or don't always get to the destinations that they're seeking, and that may limit some of their opportunities. So there's an effort at this point to review what Cottage Grove is working on and stay connected to their work so that if they find an opportunity that they pilot, for example, most recently they piloted a mobility on demand program that took people around within the city of Cottage Grove. That worked out really well and was very successful. The question might be, how can Crestwell partner with Cottage Grove or partner with their operator to look at opportunities perhaps to expand that service or franchise that service, as it were, to Crestwell and kind of strategize access to funding in that way, among other things. Another example might be tapping into van pooling and other means of getting into the metro area more effectively. One of the things that we learned in the housing needs analysis process a few years ago is that folks are coming to Crestwell looking for housing that's more affordable. It doesn't mean that they change where they work. And so that creates a whole sort of another layer of cost of living that can sometimes be really detrimental to someone's success in terms of how affordable their living costs are. So as your planner, it was a really beneficial experience to work with Kelly's team and the city of Cottage Grove and folks at South Lane Wheels to hear what they're thinking through. The work going down to Douglas County, for example, is maybe a little less relevant to us, but the work talking about getting north to the metro areas is absolutely spot on. So we hope to learn a lot from this experience and partner where we're able to.
Sounds like a good plan. Does any counselors have any questions or comments?
I might just make the comment that this has been an impressive body of work that you guys have done, especially in a COVID year. So I am definitely impressed, and thank you guys for all the hard work that you've done. It'll be interesting to see how these findings move forward and such. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor.
All right, Councillor Clark.
I just wanted to reiterate, or I guess amplify or boost the message that was just shared. Getting the opportunity to serve on Lane Act. I know it can be tricky business, right? To kind of get everyone together and for everyone to agree on kind of a forward process and what it is that we all want to accomplish via transportation. And so I was really impressed as I was reading over the information in the packet and seeing the presentation as well. And thank you for all of your great work. I'm very excited to see what happens.
Thank you, Councilor.
All right, well, thank you again for being here, Ms. Clark, and we look forward to future endeavors that might help benefit Creswell.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, Mayor and councilors.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our discussion items. First up is the municipal judges contract, and that's Manager Amberg.
Thank you, Mayor. You have before you tonight the contract that was negotiated between the Administration and Finance Committee and the judge. Councilor Castilla talked about it a little bit. Basically, it is the same contract as before, with the addition of a paragraph stating that he becomes the judge pro tem upon his retirement, and that he would like to retire in August on his 75th birthday. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the contract. It was reviewed by the judge and by our city attorney, both.
Okay. I think the only question I have is that date. So on that first page, it says agreement between the parties dated August 9th, 2027, the agreement.
Oh, that's interesting. 2027 is way far away. It must be, I'll have to look. It should be 2017.
Okay.
We'll get that corrected.
I was confused by that. That was the only thing I had, but otherwise, I'm glad our judge is staying on. You said 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we got 5 years, and then we got to start looking for a new judge.
Mm-hmm. Well, then the pro tem would become the municipal judge, and the municipal judge would become the pro tem, is what he's suggesting.
Rash, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, does anybody have any questions or comments regarding our municipal judge contract? I think Councilor Brachu.
So just on what you said, the pro tem becomes the municipal judge, that's automatic? That's kind of what or that's still debatable? I mean, that's just a request that he's making, is what you're saying?
That's correct. The city council still has the ability to choose whomever they would like for a municipal judge, or use whatever process you would like to use to obtain a municipal judge.
Okay.
So since we haven't done that since 1984, is there any processes in place to choose a municipal judge?
It would be the same processes. It would be whatever process you choose. If you wanted to do a situation where you advertise the position and had people apply, that would be fine. You could do that. You could write letters to municipal judges and ask them to apply. You could invite attorneys that specific attorneys that might be a good municipal judge. You could appoint an attorney that the process is whatever you make it to be.
So in 5 years, some of us may not be here. So I think that's something, I'm sorry, Finance and Administration Committee, but that might be an additional charge that we think of looking at in the next couple of years, so we can have something in place for when our judge retires. And the next city council isn't going, what do we do now? Because we've had the same judge since 1984.
I'm sorry.
I want something in place to have a guide.
I think the judge would recommend that you appoint the pro tem, because the pro tem judge essentially does serve as your municipal judge whenever he's not here. And the pro tem has been here, I want to say, about 5 years himself.
Right.
So he would be a good choice. And that, I'm sure, is who the judge feels would be his best successor.
But like you said, it's up to council. And so I don't want to jump to any conclusions that we would automatically appoint Judge Rash just because in 2021, that was a recommendation. In 2026, who knows what that council is going to want to do. So I just don't want to jump the gun on.
But you may want to leave the process of making that selection to that city council rather than trying to set up a process for them that is not binding in the long run anyway.
So we don't have any processes for when we hire a city manager or hire a city attorney. There's nothing in place on how we go about doing that.
The city manager, typically city managers are typically hired a couple of different ways. One, you either hire a executive search firm to go out and find the people and bring them to you, and then you interview them, or you again advertise the position and see who applies and go forward from there. The way I was hired was actually I was invited to come as an individual. They had gone through several different rounds of trying to find a city manager and were unsuccessful. My name came up and the mayor met with me and asked me if I would be interested. I said I would be interested. The city council interviewed me and hired me. So the process can be as varied as the council, but it really, I think, in order to give the person being hired any level of security or sense of security, it should be a process that's determined at the time.
Okay, I completely disagree with that, but okay. Councilor Castilla.
Yeah, so I think I kind of agree with what Michelle is saying. That I think what we see right now is kind of a forecast of what could potentially happen, but you know, a lot could happen in 5 years. There's no guarantee that either judge will be in any of these positions at the end of this contract. So I would say, so if Judge Palmer is going to retire in 2026, maybe in 2024 that it starts to be looked at, or you know, or something like that. Yes, it's kind of hard to plan for something in 5 years when none of it is etched in stone. If we come up with something for 2026 now, you know, it's too hard to say that this is what's going to happen.
So to make it clear, I wasn't suggesting that we add any of this to his contract. This was just a separate piece that we have to consider going forward. His contract will expire in 5 years. What are we going to do at the end of that 5 years? And every HR department has processes in place on how to hire and fire and evaluate. And we as a city council are essentially HR because we employ 3 employees and we evaluate them and we hire them and we fire them. And to say that there's no process in place on what to do when our judge retires, I find that perplexing. But again, 5 years from now, I may not be here, so not my problem, I guess. Councilor Bracho.
I'm in agreement with you, Mayor. I believe that we need to have a process, because what happens if something happens prior to retirement, unanticipated, God forbid, that we would have to replace sooner than that. So I think that having a process identified would be a great idea. And if the process has to be changed because the council at that time doesn't like it, then they could certainly do that. But I think it's kind of a gift to them to have that process already defined and in place when the time comes, so they can look at it and go, oh, we got a process, this is what we do, or oh, now we got to come up with it now, you know. So I think that this is us looking forward and anticipating ahead.
Well, and I don't want to run into a position where we forgot to keep track of when somebody's retiring or when somebody's leaving us, and then, you know, we're in this position now because we didn't know when it was going to expire because nobody's really keeping track of that. And then all of a sudden, oh, whoops, his contract expired and we forgot to have a conversation about it. So we don't, it just perplexes me. Councilor Medina.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I agree with you, Mayor, that I think having a process in place is going to make it, one, a lot easier for the incoming council, whatever council that is, to at least have some framework and to help us in the meantime if something, you know, God forbid, does happen, we have something to fall procedure in place. So no, I think that's good planning.
So maybe that can just be a separate piece for the Finance and Administration Committee to work on in the future. I'm not saying tomorrow, but keep it on our radar so we don't forget.
My only concern as the devil's advocate is that you don't tie your hands too much in the future, and the future is unpredictable. And they followed a process before and it failed, and they selected a second process and it failed, and so they went to a third process in order to find me. I was the third process that they tried, so I just would, not want to see it tie anybody's hands. And also, when it comes to choosing a city attorney, there are just so many different ways to do it that I think it's very hard to predict. And that's all I'll say.
But Michelle, you're a city manager of multiple employees, and are there processes in place on hiring and firing employees and evaluating employees?
We are not a union shop, so we use a variety of methods to hire. And well, we only have one method for firing employees, and we're not going to use that. But we have not used that. That's a disciplinary process, and that's very clear with BOLI. But as far as hiring people, we have used many different ways. We've used a temp agency at times to fill in a position just to see if a person is going to fit. We've had people that we hired straight out of the RARE program. We've had people competitively apply for positions. We have a situation where we had a competitive competition for the position. The position was filled. The position's no longer going to be filled. We went back to the list. We took the first person off the list. We offered the job to that person. So we use a wide variety of techniques to fill positions. We don't just rely on one methodology.
Okay.
And the reason behind that is because sometimes we need to test a person out for a while. We don't want to just bring somebody on cold into an important position that we don't have the ability to really vet. Sometimes you want to bring somebody on quickly and you've already vetted them. So you want to be able to, make the best use of opportunities when they come up, when you have an excellent employee who's available.
Right. And I completely understand that methodology, and I'm certainly not suggesting that we have a set stone procedure in place and that is what council must follow. But I like the idea of having multiple options in place as a guideline of what council can follow. I don't know about any other counselors here, but I don't have any experience in HR. I don't have any experience as a manager hiring and firing people. And I don't know a lot of councils that do have that experience and have the time to become a board basically that hires and fires people, and to have guidelines in place for us is helpful going forward. And I like what Kevin said about looking to the future of our future council and giving them the best tools that we can. Mm-hmm. And I don't like the idea of just leaving it up to whatever happens. I'm a planner, so I don't like that idea. But anyway, moving on, we can discuss that at a later time. The specific contract that's in front of us, do people have any questions, comments? Do we want to add anything, take anything away? Is everybody okay with this? Besides the date, I didn't have anything else. And it looks like everybody else is cool with it. All right, so we can move this to the next council meeting for adoption. All right, moving on to item 5B, which is a resolution declaring economic, mental health, and criminal activity crisis. Manager Amberg.
Thank you, Mayor. This was brought to the attention of yourself and myself by a counselor and was asked to have it placed on the agenda for discussion. As you are aware, I'm sure, all of the COVID restrictions will be lifted come Wednesday. So that means no masks, no 6-foot distance, none of the cough and cover and things like that will apply any longer. So in addition to what the city attorney has said about this, it really is, the timing of it is really unfortunate if it's something that you wish to have passed. It's not going to be very meaningful at this date, I'm afraid.
All right, Councilor Medina.
Yes, I can totally understand, you know, she's lifting restrictions here, I believe, what is it, on the 30th? The problem I see is that the people of Creswell have dealt with their freedoms being infringed upon for over a year now. Business have been squeezed, people in general relationships, masked versus unmasked, shots versus non-shots. And this is more of, like we always say, the friendly city. We shouldn't pin our patrons against business owners and vice versa. And it's caused a lot of issues. And I believe it's time for Creswell, the council, to stand up and show Creswell that, hey, yes, we are here. We believe in your liberties. We are here to do what we can to not make sure those aren't being infringed. So if we went and moved forward with something, I don't know, like I think, who was it? It was Douglas County did one where to implement the restrictions, I believe it's approval by, you know, the Senate and then governor, government, all bodies to include, then they would implement it. I think we just have to have some safety checks put in place now from what has happened and moving forward, just so the people of Creswell know that, you know, they're going to be looked after.
All right. Any other councilors have any other questions or comments regarding this? Nothing? So do we want to consider this resolution going forward? Councilor Hutchinson.
I agree with what Joe was saying about having something in place. Just because she opens it up on the 30th doesn't mean that she's going to close it back down after the 4th. This is just to protect the people, protect the businesses, not put it on the businesses to be checking for vaccinations and people wearing masks.
Okay. I don't see anywhere in this resolution where it says that in particular, that businesses will not be liable for checking for masks or asking patrons to mask. Am I missing something on this resolution?
This resolution is just an example.
Right. Okay. So you want to add that as a thing to this resolution, or what?
Yeah. Well, in the beginning, when the shots came out, and then they had the governor wanted to do the passports and making businesses check people at the door to make sure they're vaccinated so they can have their masks off. It's just to protect the people and not put it upon the businesses to have to deal with standing there checking people's vaccination cards.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be exactly like this, but something like this, or I don't know.
Okay. Any other, Councilor Medina, is your hand back up?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just, I totally blinked bird. This is just more of a guideline, an example of we've seen what other people have, you know, what other cities we've done. Douglas, Bakerfields, I believe Sandy has also passed their own resolutions in regards to this matter, and it's going around. I just think it's important that we have something as like a guideline in place to let Cresswell know that their freedoms will not be infringed again. And this has caused so much strife within the community that it needs to, like before, stop. So everyone can just get back to regular normality. And that's what we're hoping for on the 30th. But I think we should have something in place for Cresswell in case it does something like this happens again or restrictions come further down. Because yes, there is no confirmation on an absolute end. It says June 30th, nothing about that she can't implement. So we still run the risk of it happening again.
Okay. So did everybody read our city attorney's recommendations regarding this? And I believe he brought up some very good points that we need to consider if we are proposing a resolution to be adopted. And so I need to hear from council, is this what council wants to move forward with? Not this particular resolution. Sounds like Councilor Hutchinson and Medina want to tweak it and make it our own resolution somehow. And is that what council wants to do? Councilor Prachu.
I'll go ahead and weigh in now. So when this was first brought up, I want folks to know I really do give all of these things some strong, serious consideration, and so I understand wholeheartedly where the idea is coming from. At the same time, I was initially very concerned about the liabilities that we might be bringing upon ourselves in doing something like this. We have to be extremely careful because I don't know exactly what authority we would have as a council in some of these cases. That's the big one for me. So what's good for the goose isn't necessarily good for the gander. I'll say that. And sometimes I would even I might even say that I don't know it's good for the goose either. I think that this is kind of a dangerous road to go down, frankly, without at least a lot more legal consideration. We're going to need to take our time to work through this. If we don't know exactly what we want right now, then it's going to take us some time to process that and get it to a place where we can vote on it as a council. So I'm inclined myself to see what happens after the 30th and then take it from there. That's my inclination. So.
All right. Councilor Clark, Inman, or Castilla, would you like to weigh in?
Sure, Mayor. Yes, as well, when this thing first came to my attention, I read over that resolution several times, and quite frankly, I'm just a little confused as to what exactly they are proclaiming. I just, on what authority as a council can they really implement a lot of these things that they are putting down on paper? And then I came across, and and like I said, maybe this great thing for Baker City, and my hats off to them for whatever they're doing there. Their situation is probably entirely different than Cresswell's. And I came across an article that was actually written by Baker City newspaper, and it's actually titled, these are not my words, these are theirs, Baker City's flawed COVID-19 resolution. And it was written, you can look it up and read it. It's interesting. It's a good read. And it was written by Jason Jacoby, Baker City Herald editor. And I'm not gonna read it out here, but I think if we're going to do something like this, I think it can't be like what Baker City has written. Like I said, maybe that works for them and their situation, but And then two, I believe that resolution was driven by citizens of Baker City, businesses that asked for this resolution. I don't see that here in Cresswell. I know a couple of people that have maybe commented, have blasted something on social media, but I do not see a band of businesses that are asking for this to be put into place. I think Cresswell, the city of Cresswell, has done a pretty good job of trying to take care of the businesses, doing what we can for them. Do we have any that have gone out of business? Have shut down?
Manager.
Not that I know.
I asked Manager Amberg this, and she couldn't find any businesses that have shut down in the last year due to COVID. But
now,
I'll let Manager Amberg speak to that.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilor Castillo, for the question. To my knowledge, I do not know of any businesses that have ceased to operate due to the closures that are due to COVID. Some businesses have shut down for a while. Some businesses have scaled back. Some businesses have changed their model and way of doing things. However, working with RAIN and working with the entrepreneurial networks that we have in town, I have not heard of anyone who has made the decision to shut their business permanently because of COVID regulations.
Okay, just one more comment, and I'm done. I think that our city attorney Ross has given us some good advice, and I think the city of Cresswell pays him pretty good money for that advice, and I think we should really heed that advice. I'm not saying we don't do a resolution or some type or form, but I could not be okay with just adopting the Baker City one. And it's great, it's a good deal if it works for them, but I could not get on board with that.
All right, thank you, Councilor Castillo. I agree with you on our attorney put a lot of thought into this. It sounds like this isn't the first time that he's gotten this question. So he seemed very prepared to answer and to pick apart the points of this resolution that council doesn't have authority to implement. So I think what Councilor Prachi said about city council having the authority to declare all these things. One, do we have that authority? It doesn't seem like we do, according to our city attorney. And the liability part as well, he brought up that it creates liability by empowering residents to flout state authority that has been upheld by the Oregon Supreme Court. So, yeah, and again, this resolution was back, when was this passed? March 2021. And I feel like our circumstances have changed since March 2021. And I understand the sentiment that you don't trust our governor to hold her word and to allow us to continue to operate going forward after June 30th. And so maybe that's the time that we discuss this again, if that's what council wants to do. But why would we put something in place when things are changing and going back to normal? And why would we adopt something that our city attorney seems to have a lot of issues with? I don't feel good going forward with this resolution as it is written. Councilor Inman, just want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak if they want to. Councilor Clark, this is a work session, so no decisions can be made, but we need to figure out if this is a direction that we want to go in. Do we want to move forward with this resolution as it's written? Do we want to, what do we want to do? Councillor Clark, I believe you had your hand up, then Councillor Inman.
Sure. So as I was reflecting back on the letters that we received as city councilors and that were shared with the city or city staff, one of the things that I noted in all of the letters were that they were exactly the same. Right, which leads me to believe that they were likely kind of cut and pasted and shared somewhere. Otherwise, I believe that that is miraculous if everyone came up with the same exact language to that. And so I have question marks, right, as I'm thinking about the letters that we received and the feedback that we got. I'm in agreement with what has been shared by Councillor Prochu and Councillor Castilla as well. You know, I ask myself the question of kind of what metrics are we using to gauge kind of the unhappiness factor or the strife that has been caused specifically here in Cresswell. And so is this something that we have personally experienced? Is it something that has been reported, again, with some specificity around what the experiences have been? I mean, I could certainly talk about what I have experienced as a human being in Cresswell. But like I said, I want to make sure that it's not something that has kind of that is true to someone's specific experience and true to the Cresswell experience, as opposed to something that may kind of pick up some speed maybe on social media or in other venues. And so, like I said, I'd want to make sure that the metrics are specific to Cresswell and that we use a variety of methodology to get feedback from our citizens. I put just great faith in the words of our attorney and the guidance of our attorney. And so when I read things, my experience with attorneys is that they don't put things in writing that they don't stand fully behind. And so when I see things such as, you know, whereas clauses are not merely throwaway statements in a resolution, and that they should form the factual and policy background for the resolution, and that they should be based on evidence, that's something that sits with me and that I hear. You know, as a legal matter, I do not support using a resolution to imply certain authority that is not actually held by the county. I hear that and I take great heed to those words as well. You know, that I'm generally okay with using a resolution to make a political statement. I believe it's not best practice. And so I want to hear that as well and honor those words. You know, having concern that Baker City is creating liability for itself by empowering its residents to flaunt state authority that has been upheld by the Oregon Supreme Court. Again, these are just some of the things that I'm reading in the packet that I really want to just be really thoughtful of. And before our council moves forward with something, I would want to make sure that we are working in conjunction with our city attorney, that what we're doing is in legal good standing, as well as specific to the citizens of Cresswell.
All right, Councillor Inman.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So for me, I would say that the attorney's comments were huge red flags. I think the liability and some other things that have been stated by counselors, I'm in agreement with. And at this point, this resolution would not be something that I would move forward with.
Okay. Councillor Medina.
Yeah, just a couple things. On the newspaper that you read, I would recommend probably getting two sides of the equation, and then that way, so we can get the whole story on either side, not a one-sided paper. You know, kind of like our local paper.
Which paper are you referencing?
You discussing, I believe it was the paper written in Brownsville in regards to the resolution that was passed. Where was it? Oh, sorry, I think, yeah, Baker City, sorry.
Oh, I believe Councillor Castilla brought that up.
Yeah, it was just, instead of one article, it's always good to do a couple. And as for everyone's getting really hung up on, I think, the exact wording and the size of this resolution, when the whole goal is to do something for Crestwell that's worked out between this council to make something good for Crestwell. Okay. So, I mean, because regardless of your side of anything, everyone should have their freedoms to make a choice, their freedoms of regardless of side. And so I think it's important for the mayor and especially council to let the people know that we're here for them, because they're going to make that decision next voting around too. So I just believe that this is something strong. And as for the letters, I believe I read over some that, look, copy and paste it. I think before we make comments in regards to the citizens of Crestwell, I would think about not all are probably as talkative or able to present themselves in a way they really know how to, because they don't do it on a regular basis. So I would be hesitant on that. But like I said, moving forward, this is just a resolution for Crestwell to be what we want it to be. This whole Baker City is an example. Obviously, things have gone and changed. Yes, we hope everything stays open June 30th. We all do. We all want it. But I think we are very lacking in our administrative duties if we don't have something to help protect the people of Crestwell. Because obviously people have written, there is a concern. I go around and I'm always talking to people, business owners. They may not have closed, ask them about their loss in profits, what that directly does to their family when they lose profits like that, especially if it's 50%. So I would incline everyone to go speak to the business owners directly, get their numbers. How much money have you lost? How much big of a hit is this to you and your family? Did you have to move? How much food has gone down based on how much you can take home now? So it's a variable on either side. Like I say, this is a resolution we make for Crestwell our way, the way this council wants it.
Okay, so how would we like to proceed? It sounds like this resolution as it's written is not what we want. And Councilor Medina, you had asked that we discuss the resolution. That's why the resolution's on the agenda. If you are talking about doing something else for Crestwell, then that needs to be brought up as well. Are you talking about an alternative solution to a resolution?
No, I'm talking about a resolution.
Okay. And you like this resolution as it's written? Because that's what we're discussing.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I keep saying is, yes, I understand the citizens brought this to our attention as a matter of example of, especially since that was before I think the June 30th deadline even came out. So people obviously want to get open, but yeah, it's the goal's a resolution, but like I say, like we built it. So I think continuing, we should continue discussion to talk about how to get there. And so however that plays out in the schedule or I don't know exactly what we have to do, but.
So is it council consensus that we would like to move forward with discussing the resolution at a future agenda? Is it council consensus that we will not want to move forward with discussing this resolution at a future agenda? I can't proceed without council's majority. I need a majority consensus to move forward or not move forward. I can't just go and say drop it, and I can't just go and say move forward with it. I need council consensus on this.
It's a discussion, guys. Just. Oops.
Councilor Prachu.
So that would probably be what I would suggest, is that if we were to dissect how we would proceed with this discussion, how do you imagine that might look, Joe? Councilor Medina, I should say. Excuse me. So let's maybe start with the goal in the end, and I understand that your goal is for the citizens of Crestwell, but what exactly will we be doing for the citizens of Crestwell with this? So let's start with that question, if that's okay with Mayor.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to I'm trying to draw out exactly what we hope to achieve with the resolution, so that we understand at least what the end goal is. And I'm not sure I really understand that from what we've talked about right now. It's protecting the citizens of Crestwell, but I'm not sure exactly what we're protecting them from the future of what the governor could do. Well, we could. There's so many things that could happen, so we can't really create something around all the different possibilities of the things that could happen or something like that. So I think that we would need to really have some specific, and I think that Councillor Clark alluded to this, some metrics, some ideas of what are the things that we know for sure that we can say in the beginning of this resolution that would say, you know, that these things have happened to these businesses that have caused these problems and therefore require these actions. And so I don't know that we have that data, for one. So let's just work backwards from the goal and maybe tell me a little bit about where you're headed with it.
Headed, I think our major thing is we need to let Crestwell know that the first thing is safeguarding their freedoms based upon our our not declaration, but I keep wanting to say national anthem.
Constitution.
There we go. Sorry, my thing's messing up and crackling in my ear. Yes, the Constitution. So we're just trying to guard the freedoms of the people of Crestwell to make their choices and to not implement things that would violate the Constitution and their freedoms and rights. We won't support restrictions that have done that, as we've seen for the past year, people's rights being sponged and squashed on. So I think it's just, like I said, it's a safeguard, it's a stepping stone. So I think that's the major thing, is just standing up.
All right. Councillor Castilla, and then Manager Amberg, I see your hand up.
Yes, and that's what I'm just trying to understand exactly how something like that would work. I mean, I guess I just don't understand. I'm sorry that, you know, if we say, hey, we're making a resolution that the city of Crestwell, our citizens do not have to follow the authority of whoever's above us, you know, whoever sends the law down to us. If we say that, for example, I don't know, we're not going to follow these rules. How do we, as a city council or the city, I mean, how do we back that up? I just don't understand that.
The Constitution of the United States.
So you bring up a very good point, Councillor Castilla, because we all took an oath to uphold not only the city of Crestwell, but all the jurisdictions above us, including Lane County, the state of Oregon, and the U.S. Constitution. So no, we can't overstep authority of jurisdictions above us.
You can when it infringes on people's rights.
And I guess
yes, we do have permissions. We do have the authority to pass resolutions stating that.
According to our city attorney, we might not have that authority. Okay. And as it's written in this resolution, we do not have that authority. Councillor Castilla.
Yeah, so I mean, so a really good example, I think, would be so if we say OSHA can't find the local market down the street because you know, how do we, and the OSHA comes in and says, no, we're finding you because you're not following the rules. How do we as a city say, no, we just passed a resolution that says they don't have to? I mean, how does that stick? I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an attorney, but it just doesn't sound possible to me, you know. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I mean,
no, I just think it's a very good question for our city attorney. I think that's a very good question to ask our city attorney. I think he would know. Unless Manager Amberg knows, I think he would be the best person to ask that. Manager Amberg, did you have anything to say? I saw your hand up and then it went away.
My only comment was that what I was hearing Councilor Medina speak to was going to be the same as what you said, Mayor, was that you do have constitutional, you do take an oath of office that requires you to follow the Constitution of the United States. You might want to relook at those oaths of office, and maybe you could do a resolution that's even stronger than your oath of office. Or you could do a resolution in alignment with the oath of office that you take that says that you will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Oregon and of the county and the charter of the city of Cresswell. But it sounded like that just sounded to me like that's what Councilor Medina was already asking for.
All right, so we're making some headway, I think. As to the time limit, do we want to keep discussing this evening? Do we want to, I guess we didn't come to our end goal as Councilor Prachu suggested that we do, because we do need to know what our end goal is in order to find solutions and tools to implement that. So, Councilor Hutchinson.
Could we possibly gather more information and facts and talk about it at next month's work session?
What sort of information and facts would you like?
Like Manager Amberg said about the Constitution, and just getting facts on asking the lawyer some questions. And I mean, what rights do we really have?
Okay. Manager Amberg.
I would recommend that if that was the case, that you wanted to discuss this with the city attorney, that we invite the city attorney to the next city council meeting, and he could advise you best on what direction to take and actually could assist you. The problem with putting something on a future agenda item is that it has to be available to the public for review. So we can't just go out and get random items or even an assemblage of items. I wouldn't want to do that because I don't speak for the 7 of you. So I would need to have the 7 of you submit items to me that we would put together that would have to be included in the packet for the public to review prior to the meeting, or else you can't discuss it. That's just the way it is. That's open meetings law. But so those are a couple things to keep in mind. If you want, it's best if you come with something very specific like you did tonight, and you discuss that item like you did tonight. That is full disclosure. That is what this is supposed to be. This is how it's supposed to be run. But if you bring any items that are not something that the public has had the opportunity to see, that's in violation of the open meetings law. So we need to make sure that all materials are in the packet. I'm sorry.
Can we get a date on when those have to be turned in to you by?
Those have to be turned in. Well, it depends on if it's going to be, it depends on what meeting you're going to discuss it on. Generally, it's 2 weeks before the meeting.
Okay.
So I guess my question to council is, if we don't want to discuss this particular resolution because we don't agree with it, how do we want to proceed? Councilor Medina.
Are we able to, I don't know how like the scheduling that, so if we want to discuss it, let's say, and get that information by like the next session. So, and obviously we all agree that the Brownsville one is not, the one for us. Baker City, sorry, I always get, there's 4 of them, I always get it mixed up. Baker City, yes. It's not the one for us, but so do we go start schedule as something new or do we just continue the discussion based on this line item? That's what I'm just trying to.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out as well. So are you proposing we have our own resolution drafted?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not ready to have a resolution drafted because I don't think we have the authority to draft a resolution pertaining to this particular subject matter. I need more input from our city attorney before. I don't want to draft something, have our city attorney review it, and then tear it apart.
Yeah,
So-
sorry, I didn't mean draft, like draft something up. Yeah, sorry about that. No, that's not what I meant anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not drafting. Just, I mean, like I said, I was thinking of scheduling. Just okay, we move to another subject. You know, because it seems like that's what it is for trying to get it scheduled further. So how do we do it under a different line item? Do I have to make a motion to talk to rep to? That's see, it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, I'm confused how council would like to move forward. Manager Amberg has her hand up. Maybe she has a good suggestion for us. Manager Amberg.
Oh, I'm sorry. The most direct way to address it at this moment would be to take a consensus vote of City Council on whether or not to move this forward to the next City Council work session for discussion. This being the development of a resolution, and you don't really, without any real clear draft at this point.
Right. So that's my hang up is we don't have a resolution to discuss because we don't have a draft resolution that we like. So how do we do that?
You would have to move this discussion forward to the next City Council meeting or some future date. You can pick a different date. It doesn't have to be the next one if you need more time to get your thoughts together. But then at that meeting, you could draft a council resolution, or if materials were submitted into the packet, you could consider materials. It's very nebulous right now, so it makes it kind of hard, but you could move forward with the understanding that you want to consider a resolution, but I don't even know what the name of the resolution would be at this point.
Right. Councilor Castillo. You're still muted. You're still muted.
Sorry, I'm muted and I did not mean to have my hand up. I'm just kind of, I guess, not sure where to go with this. You know, I don't want to see us waste a lot of time and stuff putting something into place that, like I said, that really has no backbone, no bite, no teeth. What are we really accomplishing? At the end of the day, what does this resolution really do? And I would, and are we as a council doing this, or are we truly speaking for the citizens of Cresswell? I don't, I talk with a lot of people out there, and from what I've seen, my point of view is Cresswell has really come together really, really well during this time. It's been, people have worked together, have been very cooperative. Even people that did not want to wear the stupid mask were wearing the stupid mask when they don't want to. I've just been really impressed with the citizens of Cresswell, but maybe I'm wrong. If the citizens of Cresswell are saying, hey, you guys need to do this, hey, let's do it. Let's put something together that makes sense and that we can actually back up. Because at the end of the day, if we write something up that just, hey, is really kind of telling the governor what we think, what does that accomplish? That does nothing for the citizens of Cresswell.
Right, and I like the city attorney's suggestion on council making a statement or to the governor, and there's nothing that stops any of you councilors from doing that. you can speak as a counselor and how you feel, how different things are affecting your city and what you see as a counselor in your city. So I don't know how to move forward. I need council consensus on if we want to continue this discussion at a future work session, or do we want to wait and see what we can come up with when, I don't know. Councilor Bracho.
So thinking about how this was brought in, we received the letters, and then from the letters, it was mentioned that let's get this into a work session. So here we are, and we're in the work session. What I'm thinking, though, is I guess if I were going to be tackling this, knowing that there are things that you like about the Baker City resolution, then I would say get your highlighter out and start going through, and then every line of that resolution that you say, I like that, and I think it would benefit the citizens of Cresswell. Okay. You read that next line and I like it, but yeah, probably really ain't going to make a big difference to Cresswell. But anyway, figure out what the things are that you like, and for sure that will benefit the citizens of Cresswell, and then bring that back and say, I'd like to discuss this. Then we've got something to work with and something to start with. But to take this resolution in its entirety and then for us to sit here in a work session and dissect it, I don't think is a good use of our time. So I would be of the persuasion that we drop this for now, and that if anyone wants to bring it back to council, they can do so with a little bit more clarity.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? Councilor Clark.
I was just going to say that I concur with what Councilor Bracho just shared.
Okay. I would be in agreement as well. What we have before us is not a document that it sounds like any of us like. I don't like the document as it's written. There's a lot of things in there that I don't agree with. There's a lot of things that I don't think we even have authority to declare as a council. So if we want to move forward on this, I think somebody is going to have to bring it up, and we need to have a little bit more teeth, a little bit more something, a resolution that speaks to the city of Cresswell and not to another city with different circumstances. Is council okay with dropping this until to be determined? I have 2 yeses from Bracho and Clark, 3 including myself. Councilor Castilla says yes. Councilor Inman says yes. And Councilor Medina and Hutchinson. Yes, no, okay.
I say wait till we have more information and come back to it.
Okay. All right, moving on. We have one more item, and that is resume in-person meetings. Manager Amberg.
Thank you, Mayor. As you all know, from the last discussion that we just had, we will be able to go to in-person meetings starting Wednesday. So the question I have for you is that something that you want to do? When do you want to do it? How do you want to do it? Knowing that we cannot guarantee that we will have a media feed for at least about a month. We're working on getting a media center set up in the council chambers that will allow us to put the program out over social networks. However, we will not have that available until after the July 1st. We will not even start working on it until the July 1st budget is in place, and it may take a month, maybe 2, to get that in place. However, you can still meet in person, and people can meet, can come to the city council chambers and watch you meet. So just need to know so that we know. We'll have to rescind the resolution that you're working under right now, and we'll have to notice the meetings as being in person. So just need some decision from you on that. When, where, and how.
When, where, and how, people. That's what she wants to know. And so just to make it clear, we will not be able to stream our meetings once we are in person until we get the media system in place in council chambers, which won't happen until after July 1st and could take 1 to 2 months to install. So
that is correct.
Okay. So how would council like to proceed going forward and getting back in person? Councilor Medina.
I say, yeah, let's get that train started. I think it's time to get back into where we can see when people want to come and speak to us face to face and in person, and where we can be together on the council. And I think it's time to get back into the swing of things, back to normality.
All right. So would you suggest the next council meeting, which would be July 12th?
Yep.
Okay. Councilor Castilla?
Yes, as much as I don't want to give up the comfort of meeting in my den in my short pants, yeah, I think we need to get real and get back to real life, get back to pre-COVID, and let's just move forward on this.
Okay.
ASP.
All right. Councilor Clark.
I think that one of the things that the COVID restrictions have revealed is that we're able to, more people are able to attend our meetings if they're able to be live streamed. I think about individuals who can't physically access the space, who can't actually be there. I think about individuals who can't schedule childcare or being able to be away. And so I would encourage us to think about continuing this format as we have talked about in the past, as it being just an important accessibility piece until we have the sound system set up.
Okay, so you would like to wait until the system is in place in council chambers and it can be streamed?
Correct.
Which could take us into, sorry, I'm just bringing up the calendar, possibly August work session.
Or September.
Or September council meeting. At the latest, hopefully. All right, I believe it was Councilor Hutchinson and then Councilor Inman.
I say back in face-to-face.
As soon as possible?
Yes,
okay.
Next meeting.
Okay. Councilor Inman.
Thank you. I also agree with Councilor Hutchinson of being back in person July 12th, although I do appreciate Councilor Clark because we have pulled in a lot of viewers during this time, but also thinking about getting back in August or September seems like a long time. So I would vote for the July 12th in person.
All right. Councilor Braccio, you have any weigh-in?
I do. I went ahead, took a look at our city YouTube page just to kind of get a feel for how many views those videos are getting.
Ooh, hit us with some numbers, Councilor Braccio.
Yeah. Well, so it's kind of interesting. They're not as up there as I thought they would be. So And it really kind of depends on the content of the meeting, but including the numbers that you're getting are the number of times that people have watched it either live or on the replay. So, and our average council meeting and work session is anywhere between 30 and 50 views. Whereas when there's some hot topics and some things like that, that can be as high as 300 or so. So just something to kind of think of. If we don't anticipate any controversial topics in the next couple of months, then we might be fine. But at the same time, I think that there's certainly, and we all understand the value of the in-person. So I'm merely throwing out that information as just something to help us make an informed decision. I'm kind of two minds about it, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, 30 to 50 is still more than one, which typically when we would have in-person council meetings, one attendee. There's a couple people that come on a regular basis. They're there every single council meeting, and I wonder if they are watching us on YouTube or if they're waiting for us to get back in person. But unless it's something in particular that we're discussing that happens to, not even the controversial things. I remember people wouldn't show up. And I understand. I mean, I work. I don't want to go to a council meeting if I don't have to. I want to be, enjoying my evenings. But so being able to stream them and people being able to watch them after the fact. I mean, I don't know how many people watched live. I think people watch it after the fact, especially when people start talking about stuff that, oh, did you hear what council said? Or the paper puts out, did you hear what council said? Then, people have that access to be able to go back and really hear what council said. And I like that this is a documentation of our council meetings. It's not just minutes. Thank you, Roberta, for the great minutes that you do. But it doesn't encapsulate everything that we discuss. I mean, that would be impossible. And so people get to know us a little bit better that maybe didn't have that access before or had the access. I shouldn't say didn't have, but our building is accessible. Our building is open to the public. Our building allows for lots of people to be there. I think we could probably fit 30 in there if we had to. But it's not convenient. And I hate to take away that convenience, but I miss being in person. This platform has been especially difficult for me as a meeting facilitator to try and keep track of who's saying what and who's talking now and whose hand is up and whose hand is still up, Councilor Castillo, and who forgot to put their hand down. And it's just, it's a lot easier when we're face to face and we're in council chambers. So I guess I would like to get back as soon as possible. And when the media piece comes into play, either in August or September, then people can start going back to YouTube if they so choose to watch our meetings. So I think Councilor Prachu, hold on. Councilor Castillo, did you still have your hand up or was that left over?
Yes, I actually did.
Okay. All right.
I'm sure Councilor Prachu was not implying that we need to have more dramatic agenda items. Just kidding. So no, my question really is probably for Manager Amberg. Is there any, and I think I know the answer, but is there any way possible that we could expedite the media stuff? Is that a possibility?
We are expediting it as quickly as possible once we have the new budget year. Absolutely. It is a top priority. Jim has already met with the people who are going to be install it. They've done everything they could except install it, and they're ordering the equipment right now. So it will really depend on what equipment's available and how quickly they can get their hands on it. But without being able to spend any money, we've done everything we can up to this point. So we have to expend the money the next point after July 1st.
Thank you guys so much for doing that, because I know that couldn't have been easy. So thank you guys for staying on top of that and working hard and diligent for us. Councilor Castillo, did you have one more thing?
Yeah, there's just one more thing, and prior to COVID, we were doing those, those like update videos, for whatever that was worth. Maybe we go back to that for a couple months or whatever.
Yeah.
No, but I really think that we should set the example and just get back into in-person.
So for new counselors, yeah, I don't know if you ever saw it, but we implemented something it was like January 2020. So I think we only got a few counselors, but at the end of a meeting, we sign up on rotation. At the end of each city council meeting and work session, Michelle records one of us just giving an overall summary of what we discussed that evening, what council is up to, and then she posted it on Facebook so people could see what council discussed and what we're working on, and just a very short impromptu video, nothing super fancy or anything, but I felt like that was barely got implemented, and then we didn't meet in person anymore. So I think that would be a good idea if we did that again. Councilor Prachu, did you have your hand up again?
I did, yeah. Do we, I know that there are recordings taken with the little pocket recorder thing that Roberta has. Is it possible that those recordings could be made available to people? It wouldn't be the same as the video, but you would have at least the audio piece of it, and that could serve as a substitute for the couple months maybe that we need it.
That is always available upon request to the public. It's the public record for the meeting, so it is always accessible to anybody who would like to request a copy or would like to listen to it. We're more than happy to facilitate that request.
What about taking them and turning them into YouTube videos that just have like a static picture with the audio, just so that they're posted and can be accessed online?
That's a great question, and I'm not prepared to answer that.
Okay. I know I could do it.
I don't know if we
I
could
don't know
or not.
if Jim's got the superpowers or not, but
I
yeah.
don't know. I know
Yeah.
Roberta might have some capabilities as well, but we can certainly look into it.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
It is kind of at least something that could fill that gap for us in between times. Because I think the thing that we're really wanting to do is make sure that we're being transparent, and that's what we're doing here. So.
Right. No, I think that's a good idea. If you could figure that out, Michelle, and see if we can get something in place before our next council meeting. So are you saying we could be back in chambers July 12th?
Yes, at 7 p.m.
Okay. So yeah, new counselors, city council meetings typically start at 7 p.m. and city council work sessions start at 6 p.m. That's how we've always done it in person. It was just convenient for us to switch the time so staff didn't have to wait around for us for 2 hours if we weren't going to be at City Hall. So July 12th, we're back in the game.
Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, I think that is the end of our meeting. Good job, guys. Just under 2 hours, 7:59 p.m. We're adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
And I'll see